Using your legs to fight your opponent's upper body is one of the superpowers of jiu-jitsu, and it's a big aspect of what allows smaller people to submit larger people. And the classic sequence that you probably learned within your first few months of jiu-jitsu is this armbar to triangle to omoplata sequence. And in all three of these submissions, your legs are primarily doing the work and your arms are just supplementing. But the problem is when your legs are being used for control, they're also vulnerable to counterattack when that control breaks down. So if you're going for a submission, it would be comforting to know that that submission has a track record of success, because it doesn't make sense to leave yourself vulnerable for no upside. And luckily you're in the right place, because that's exactly what we do here on this channel. We determine what techniques are working at the highest level so you can focus on them yourself and maximize your training time. And that's what I did for my online instructional course when it comes to passing half guard. And if you're interested in how I went about making the course and how I go about watching instructional content, there's a free PDF in the description below that outlines my process. But as far as the classic armbar triangle omoplata sequence, if we go on to BJJ Heroes and check out the stats of some of the best to ever do it, you can see that Roger Gracie had a good amount of arm bars, a couple triangles, but no successful omoplatas. And same with Marcelo Garcia, a lot of arm bars, just one lone triangle and 0 omoplatas. But we just saw Felipe Pena try an omoplata on Nicky Rod. So maybe if we check Felipe Pena's stats, we can see some omoplatas in there, but sure enough, no omoplatas. How about Andre Galvao, who trained Felipe Pena heading into this match? But again, sure enough, a decent amount of arm bars, 1 triangle, and 0 omoplatas. What about Ty and Cade? They're kind of known for some unorthodox submissions, but again, no omoplatas. So then you might be thinking to yourself, okay, maybe this is a glitch and BJJ Heroes just doesn't track omoplatas. But Cobrinha has 2 omoplatas, both of which were in the gi, and both of which he was able to grab a hold of this far shoulder. And I'm not saying this only works in the gi, because you can see Andrew Wiltsey here doing the same exact finish with the omoplata. But what I am saying is that if you look at the best to ever do it, and we pull up the statistics of Gordon Ryan, he has armbar finishes, he has triangle finishes, but he doesn't have omoplata finishes. And at this point, you're probably saying, okay, yeah, maybe that's true, but the omoplata is still a great sweep, and you can use it to get on top. And while I agree with that statement, the omoplata requires your legs for control. And when that control breaks down in a world full of leg lockers, they're gonna take advantage of your extended legs. So in my opinion, the benefits of an omoplata do not outweigh the risks associated with it. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Andrew Wiltsey, because I appreciate him sharing his story on the BJJ Mental Models podcast, and it sounds like he's now in a much better place. So again, here is him successfully using an omoplata to get the win, but now I'm about to spend the next 8 minutes all over omoplatas. If you go for an omoplata, be wary of this top knee coming over. So when they sit, they have space to slide their second leg through yours and end up attacking your legs. Now, once they get that first knee over, they don't necessarily have to sit back down. They can fall to the other side, but again, their second leg is going to be the one that's going to be trying to entangle yours. And this time it results in a backside scenario. But again, the basic battle is they're going to be trying to bring their knee across your chest and you're going to be trying to clear it. Once they have that knee in just enough, they can sit and start to pummel their secondary leg in between yours. And I think a good option for them is to put their foot on your chest. That way, if you're using your hands to cause problems for them, they can extend that leg and prevent the hand fight. Or in the case of this omoplata here, you can see Jordan still has his arm trapped. But once that foot comes up the middle, he's able to make space to clear his arm from the omoplata threat and immediately goes into his counter leg lock attack. Recently, we saw Rene roll out of an omoplata while he drove his top knee across Keiran's chest. And on the tail end of the roll, you can see him trying to pummel his secondary leg inside of Keiran's. But Keiran does a good job of keeping it congested and not giving Rene the space he needs to pummel his foot inside. But this is a beautiful transition here because Rene uses this space to pummel his other foot through and inside. So now when that foot shoots all the way through, he ends up in a very tight knee bar. And again, your opponent is going to be trying to drive their knee across your chest. And in order for you to clear their leg, you're going to have to lay backwards. And when you lay backwards, that's going to give them the opportunity to free their arm from the omoplata. And with their arm free, they can still go into that roll and aggressively drive their knee across your chest. And maybe they find themselves a little too high to thread their secondary leg through to attack your legs. So they can shoot to this reverse close guard. And at this point, you're pretty much hoping that they haven't seen Lachlan's course, because it can be a very effective way to establish control while setting up your inside heel hook. So I think we've established pretty well that they can attack our legs if we go for an omoplata. So much so that our opponent might even put themselves in an omoplata just so they can roll into their leg entries. But if we're going for an omoplata and they're trying aggressively to drive their knee across, it can be a great time to use that momentum for a sweep. Or if we're going for an omoplata and they roll, we can try and thread our second leg in between theirs to attack the legs ourselves. I think this one here by Claire is just super slick, where she's initially attacking an omoplata and Peyton's able to step over Claire's body. And again, if we can take our secondary leg and thread it through theirs, now we're attacking. And that's exactly what Claire does. Our opponent can also cartwheel over our body, and in the middle of their acrobatics, we can catch their leg and attack it. You can also go into sequences like this that I first saw from Eddie Cummings, where from the omoplata you take your knee and you're able to get it underneath them, which will allow you to set up your entries into the legs. We see Juan doing a very similar thing here, where he's using the omoplata to try and set up his leg entry. And Giancarlo doing the same thing with his omoplata, and Danaher coaching him through it.
Scooping grip, get the knee underneath.
And again, Giancarlo is trying to take his secondary leg and pummel it in between his opponents. So yes, the omoplata can be a very effective sweep and a way for you to pretty much enter a leg lock shootout with your opponent. But if we zoom in on this match between Keiran and Rene, I think we can pinpoint where the real problem is. Keiran pulled guard right away and was trying to implement his dangerous leg lock game. Keiran is known for the false reap, and if you've seen his instructional, you know that when people control his outside leg, he likes to go into this cool sequence here where he pummels his inside leg to the outside and enters into 50-50. And you can see him trying to do that here, where Rene is controlling his outside leg, so Keiran pummels his inside leg to the outside, and Rene runs away. And again, Keiran trying to enter the Z-lock, and Rene runs away. Now, when I say run away, I don't mean that as a negative thing. I think it was a very smart and strategic game plan.
If you watch that match and you say I was going backwards, you don't know what you're talking about, because Kieran's got really good leg locks and I'm not flying into a freaking leg lock.
Now, every time Rene disengages, there's an opportunity for Keiran to come up on top. But that was not the game plan. Rene is a tough problem to solve. And it looked like the game plan was to attack the legs. And even when Keiran did come up on top briefly, he sat back down on the legs. Now, I'm not saying this was a bad strategy or anything, and Keiran actually took Rene's back, and if he ended up finishing the match here, people would be saying that it was a great strategy to avoid the buggy choke. Same thing with Owen O'Flanagan at ADCC. He talked about on his podcast how referees in ADCC tend to penalize the top player for stalling. So you're better off just pulling guard and playing from there, which is fine. A very well thought out and deliberate strategy. The trade-off though is that if there's no threat of you coming up on top, then people are just gonna run from your leg attacks.
See, he wants this foot so bad.
Now again, I'm not saying that this is a bad strategy, especially if people don't know who you are, or you're lucky enough to have any sort of apostrophe in your name, which can make you very hard to find.
They can't Google my name because it's too hard to search. So I'm good. Maybe that's why. They just had no fucking clue.
But when people start to figure out who you are, it's going to be very difficult to finish your attacks. And if you hold on for too long, your opponent can capitalize on your extended limbs. So I'm not saying that this is a bad strategy, but what I am saying is that the omoplata does not fit into it. I think we've established that for the most part, the omoplata itself is a pretty trash submission.
He had the omoplata, which resulted in nothing, and an omoplata, to anyone who knows anything, it's not really an effective submission without the gi. So I wouldn't even really call that a submission. That was more like a sweep attempt. That didn't work.
So maybe it's best used as a tool to look cool in front of the judges.
That's a bar.
And I realized by saying that, I now put a huge target on my back and people are going to be trying to get me in it left and right. But for the most part, an omoplata is a decent sweep and a decent way to transition to leg attacks. But if your primary strategy is to play bottom position, then the sweep aspect of it kind of goes out the window. And we're left with the leg lock entries, which can lead to success. But the reality is that these leg entries are going to be very difficult to achieve. So you can see the first time Keiran went for an omoplata, Rene tried to drive his knee across. It didn't work. They rolled. Keiran tried to sit back for a leg and Rene ran away. So basically Rene is able to shoot his shot and attempt to counter with a strong leg attack of his own. And if it doesn't work, he can just run away with no repercussions. And then the next time it happens, Rene literally puts himself in an omoplata so he can try the same attack again, and this time it works. So I think it's just important to realize that every time you're going for a submission, you're putting yourself in jeopardy because you often have to use your legs for control, and when that control is compromised, your legs are vulnerable. So you should be confident that your attack is going to work so the benefits will outweigh the risks. And in my opinion, in a world full of leg lockers, the omoplata is a very risky submission. And I really don't think that the benefits outweigh the risks, especially if your primary strategy is to play bottom position. So shout out to Keiran and Rene. Both these guys are awesome and have shown me a ton of support. And I appreciate you two and all the other competitors out there that put it on the line to progress the sport. So go check out their instructionals. And if you're interested in the process that I use when I'm watching instructionals and competition footage, there's a free PDF down below outlining my process. And you all know the drill. Be sure to leave a fist bump in the comments section and we'll see you in the next one.
Like, comment, subscribe, join this rocket ship. We want you.